for me, probably going into that final two, yeah, world number one, world number two. You're looking to kind of find a separation between these players, and Jannik Sinner was, I think, playing probably the better tennis leading into this final. Whereas, I mean, Carlos Alcaraz was playing very well. But you look at kind of the seasons that Sinner has compiled over the past couple of years, and feels like Carlos is the only guy who kind of has the upper hand and seems to have a path to beat him. And to be treated to this final, 5 hours, 29 minutes, Alcaraz staring down triple championship point, rallying back. Sinner makes a late pushback late in the fifth. And then I mean, the only term I can use to describe the way Alcaraz played this fifth set super tiebreak was superhuman. I mean,
Yeah.
what were your takeaways from this extraordinary final?
I'll say first, I agree with you. I think that Sinner was playing better and more consistently. I think everyone kind of knew what we were going to get from Sinner on Sunday. I think he's been very reliable, very bankable player, and he hadn't dropped a set in this tournament. Whereas Alcaraz is much more up and down. I mean, Alcaraz had played really well, I guess, in this quarterfinal against Tommy Paul. That was a really high level he'd done, but first two sets against Musetti in the semis weren't great. He had a really sort of strange match against Demir Jumer in the first week and lost the set there, and looked to be maybe even going 5 with Jumer, and just sort of was not reliable. It was more up and down and chaotic. But I think that sort of up and down chaos, unpredictability factor actually really works well for him in the matchup with Sinner, and that he can keep Sinner sort of off balance, and Sinner's so methodical, so reliable, so sort of on the rails as a vehicle and doing the right things most all the time. Whereas as Alcaraz has kind of gotten under his skin or been able to rattle him a bit just by being someone who can keep him off balance. He's very balanced Sinner normally, but Alcaraz is the one player who's been able over this past year plus, as you said, to been able to beat him. He has very few losses to guys who aren't Alcaraz, or since the beginning of the 2024 season, let's say. So yeah, I thought the final actually started pretty slow. I gotta say, I don't think the first set and maybe even set and a half was all that great or memorable. I thought it was kind of flat in the arena, in the stadium. Um, there were kind of long couple opening games, but not like great shot making by either. They were kind of feeling each other out. And then the first set ended really abruptly. Alcaraz just played a really bad service game that he kind of collapsed in to give away the first set. And then Sinner got off a break. I think it was at 4-1 in the second, something like that, before Alcaraz came back. And then Sinner won in a tiebreak and then went up a break in the third. So honestly, like the first, and that's worth mentioning, people talk about all-time classics, and everyone focuses on the end of these matches, but the first roughly 2 hours of this match should not feel like it was a classic. And so it's just sort of going along. Looked like there's going to be another routine win for Sinner in this tournament. Sinner had not dropped a set in this tournament, and Alcaraz was just going to be victim number 7 for him in Paris, and that's how it was looking. And then Alcaraz, got in. Maybe Sinner dipped a little bit in the third set, but then the fourth set, I think from midway through the fourth set on, they were both playing well at the same time. And so the last, like, I don't know, I look at the clock, but roughly 90 minutes, this match was really spectacular and some of the best I've seen. Certainly the last two games, especially the service games, last two service games of the fifth set, especially just like insane shot making from both, like so low percentage, but like landing everything, just going for crazy stuff and having it work back and forth over and over, both of them. Maybe even last like 4 or 6 games. I have to rewatch it. It's kind of a bit of a blur for me now, but yeah, just the level got so high. They're both playing so well, as this match was reaching the 5-hour mark and beyond. I mean, it was really incredible what they could do there. And that sort of, I think, is up there with sort of the best stretch of tennis I've ever seen in a match. And yeah, that's when it matters most. That's when most people are tuning in, especially for our respective home countries in North America. People are waking up, maybe aren't tuned into sports from 9 a.m. on the East Coast or 6 a.m. Pacific, and seeing the best parts of this match there, which is pretty cool to have them both peak that way. And then, they were both so high, and then Alcaraz stepped it up even one level further somehow to goes up to 11 on his dial in that fifth set tiebreak, and he turned it up, and the tiebreak was a blowout, but it felt like a sort of knockout punch at the end of in round 12 or whatever boxing. It was a pretty remarkable that he was able to make it so resounding after it had been so close. And then it wasn't even like Sinner played that bad in the tiebreak. It didn't seem like. It's just
No.
Alcaraz was able to take it even further. So yeah, really satisfying. I mean, I think the match is about both of them. I think Sinner acquitted himself incredibly well. It's one of the best performances in the losing role in a final in
Yeah.
a long time. Sure, one of those 3 championship points he had in the fourth set. I think the third one maybe could have been a little bit bolder on the forehand he hit, and kind of planted it sort of too near the middle of the court, not near any lines when he had a kind of a put away possibility ball there. But that's the only thing you can knock out of 5.5 hours of tennis is pretty good from him. So yeah, it was a great match and really a consolidation of this rivalry, which I think people have who are closer followers of tennis would have seen cooking for a while. From their U.S. Open quarterfinal in 2022, probably most notably as the start line for the public, really, or even the tennis people really latching on. They played a good match at Wimbledon earlier that year, the fourth round, but it wasn't quite as memorable as the U.S. Open match. So yeah, but now they're clearly the guys and distant from the pack. I mean, it's whoever they're clearly wanting to. They are in the rankings, which they weren't for that long actually, because Zverev was up there ahead of Alcaraz
Yep.
for a lot of this year and a lot of last year too. Which never really felt right, really, in terms of sort of power rankings of tennis. But Alcaraz hadn't been reliable. Had taken a lot of bad losses early. So all is to say, yeah, they're the guys now, and this was really a tremendous launch for both of them as new generation stars. Or people, this match got good ratings everywhere. It seems like it was played in the major markets anyway that have reported numbers in France and the US. And uh, yeah, it seems like it's really doing big things for the sport and getting people into it all over again with this new batch, which is huge to have that sort of not
Mhm.
torch pass, but new flame lit here.
Yeah, and look, I'm sure there was a feeling. We're obviously we've transitioned out of this big three phase. That's inevitable. It was going to happen, and I did imagine was there a fear of where was men's tennis, I guess in particular, going to be? Does Sinner versus Alcaraz? I mean, maybe not from a playing style standpoint, but do you kind of make the natural comparison to the beginning of the Federer Nadal rivalry, especially given Alcaraz now winning 2 French Open titles. It was Rafa who was, of course, completely dominating the clay. Roger Federer back at the time was dominating the hard court swing. Of course, he was fantastic at Wimbledon too, and
Uh-huh.
Alcaraz has seems to have the grass court edge over Sinner. Is that the sort of natural comparison, or is it a little different for you?
Still different because I think they're closer in age. I feel like Federer was already established, and then it was like
Yes.
Nadal came knocking and was really trying to bust down what was Federer's kingdom. Whereas these guys, Alcaraz was number one before Sinner was number one, even though he's a little 1 year younger, I guess. And they're kind of it's a Sinner was playing catch up a bit, but then was ahead in the rankings. So the trajectories aren't quite the same in that way. But what is the same, I think, as the best of the big three rivalries, and maybe honestly for me on court, it would be my favorite matchup of the big four, big three to watch was Federer Djokovic of the permutations in terms of how they lined up on court. And what I think Sinner and Alcaraz has that one had too is they can both kind of play their best against each other and bring out their best and sort of play their peaks and their games play into each other like just
Complimentary.
as complementary exactly as puzzle pieces that snap together really well and they can make a really good picture together. It felt like with Federer and Nadal, Federer was always Nadal was able to really unsettle Federer and make him uncomfortable and not play his best and not play sort of typical A game Roger Federer tennis a lot of times. Whereas Federer and Djokovic, I think their strengths lined up with each other, so they could kind of go at their main peaks and do what they like to do and have it work against each other well enough. And that's for me what Sinner and Alcaraz do. I mean, they're great on their own, but they really do great against each other, especially Alcaraz, especially. I think
Mhm.
he seems so built to play against Sinner, and he's now won what 4 in a row against Sinner. So that's something I'll have to look for as this rivalry moves ahead. Just how Sinner can get a handle on it. I don't think it's as bad as that streak makes it seem. It's not like a Serena Sharapova type situation
No.
at all we had so far. Match points and stuff here for Sinner, and Sinner did win the Six Kings EXO they played last fall, and I don't know if that's a real thing or not. There was a lot of money on the table for that match. It felt like they were both going for it. That was actually a pretty decent match they played at that exhibition event. So I think it's pretty close. I think it's close to the numbers say. And Sinner is ahead in the rankings. And Sinner is it's maybe almost more of like um, a Sampras Agassi or like a Borg McEnroe thing where I think it's like a kind of fire and ice sort of thing. I think pretty clearly like where like Sinner really is so calm and collected. Maybe to his detriment. I think he could have done more to sort of amp up the crowd and get the crowd engaged. And I think he kind of seated all of the crowd to Alcaraz on Sunday without too much of a fight. And that's maybe something I would work on if I was Sinner because he has done that in his career. He does can do his own gestures to the crowd and pump them up. But for some reason on Sunday, while he was ahead in that match, and even until the last half hour of the match, he really wasn't doing much at all with the crowd. And I feel like that's something he kind of could have done more of maybe.
Yeah, I really the only kind of moment I think of with maybe the crowd giving a huge push to Sinner was him tracking down that Alcaraz drop shot with sort of a miraculous drop shot of his own, which kind of
Mhm.
led to that break back and that extra drama in the fifth, and you sensed I don't it was a brief sort of momentum shift, and then suddenly Alcaraz is having the pressure of serving at 5-6 and forcing that tie break. And again, we had one of these key moments, and you talk about the complimentary stuff with Alcaraz seems to lock into these unbelievable, special, mesmerizing moments because he's responding to Sinner's quality. They had this 30 all point. Sinner hits a big return, deep cross, and Alcaraz finds a miracle squash shot with the forehand, sends it back deep cross the other way, and then pounces to hit a backhand clean winner, which helped him hold serve. And you think of that moment in time, it was I don't think Sinner could have produced a better return, and yet he's the loser of that point.
No, that's the thing. It was the level of shot making they were hitting with those scores, with like those like hugely important points deep
Yeah,
in the fifth set. It wasn't like some sort of showboaty thing you do when you're up a set and double break and you can kind of go over something crazy and maybe it lands in and get a highlight out of it. These were like really important points that both of them were summoning their best stuff for. That's what really makes this match stand out is that it was high risk tennis a lot, or should be anyway. But for them, they were landing these shots over and over and over again, and just sort of pushing the envelope with each other more and more. And those were the really sort of jaw dropping moments when we were all turning to each other up in the press seats and shot and being like this is surreal how good this is. It really was.
yeah. Now, obviously, you've covered this sport a long time. You've watched a lot of Grand Slam finals. It is drawing the question. I mean, where does this one rank amongst greatest Grand Slam finals, at least you've seen? Where do you have it?
I think for me, and it's tough to. I know you have like a rankings. I think I saw you're putting earlier where was it behind or not. For me, I think that the peak it hit was for me the best I've seen of a Grand Slam final of certainly in my lifetime. I can go back and watch video of like Borg and McEnroe before my day and their
Sure.
famous fourth set tiebreak and stuff, and that's probably another one that would probably get that sort of same treatment. Um, but that moment of that match specifically in 1980. But I think for me, at the level they hit was the highest I've seen as a moment. Start to finish, like I said, the first 2 hours of this match were not especially memorable or great, and I think people hope when rewatching this match will skip over 2 hours of it, which was a long time in a sporting event to have to skip over. Um, but I do think once they got going in the you know, late in the fourth and the fifth, it was really great. I think, yeah, comparing it to the obvious comps, I think the maybe the Federer Nadal '08 Wimbledon probably maybe was more
Yeah.
consistently good the whole time, and it started pretty strong and they were very tight throughout. Didn't have the drama, the momentum swings. They were kind of mostly just I think a couple breaks, right? Those first 2 sets, and then Federer won a couple tie breaks. I'd have to look at the scoreline again. But I think it was they were not the sort of major back and forth swings that this match had. So this match had like that sort of drama. And a big overarching story arc. I think it's very satisfying to have someone come back from 2 sets down and then himself not be able to serve it out and go to a tiebreak. I think that's a kind of nice, tidy arc. The one I was at was the Nadal Djokovic 2012 Australia. It was actually the
Yeah.
first slam I covered in person. Was that tournament?
Oh, wow.
And that was just like so numbingly long. I just remember being like, honestly sitting in the stands being like so dehydrated as I was sitting there for like in the same seat for like I think I took maybe one break, but I was there for like, nearly 6 hours. It's just it's a physical experience for myself. I mean, they were obviously dying in the trophy ceremony where they brought out the chairs and stuff for them was very famous, but it was a long match. And that one was more that just felt like a constant like I don't know, brawl or tussle in more of a way. Like, it was
Yeah.
just so physical. The conditions were really slow. Every rally
Because
was, like,
they
super
couldn't hit
long.
each
They
they
couldn't
couldn't
hit
hit
they
through each
couldn't hit
other.
they could no, no, no. So
Yeah.
it didn't have the fireworks, of this one, where this one, these guys were hitting incredible winners and power and stuff. That one was
Mhm.
much more of, like, a mental, physical, just, like, not these 2 tied against each other, which was really compelling in its own ways. But for me, I prefer Alcaraz Sinner. So, I think that yeah, I think I would put it's tough. I mean, up for debate. I think the highs of this one, the moments of it were the best.
Yeah.
But as a whole thing, if you want to measure it end to end the entire way, which maybe people don't, I think people usually remember just the last, you know, final moments of it. Like not unlike how people think about NBA games. Usually, they usually think of like the finish or
For
whatever it
sure.
may be.
Yeah.
And so maybe tennis can be that way as well, where just sort of people tune in for the end. And if you're just watching, if you're just measuring the last hours of these finals, I think Alcaraz Sinner for me would be the best of all time. Sure.
You highlighted this. Obviously, these two feel like they are certainly ahead of the rest of the pack, and they've won and shared each of the last six majors now, which is unbelievable and kind of the dominance we were used to through the Big Three era. We still have one member standing, obviously Novak Djokovic, and look, he did fight his way through the semifinals. I thought he played a great match against Alexander
Mhm.
Zverev. He certainly pushed against Sinner. He had moments. He probably had an opportunity to get a set in there. Do you feel though like what was this probably the goodbye at the French Open? I know he alluded to that in press that this could be the last time we see him at Roland Garros. And is he maybe obviously contemplating 2025 as a potential
Yeah.
year even?
I think he's definitely contemplating it. I think he doesn't have his mind made up. I believe him when he says that he doesn't know. I think that he would not be someone. He's not especially cagey in that way. I think he what if he really felt it was going to be the end. I think he would say it relatively quickly if he had his mind made up. But yeah, his gesture certainly, as he was leaving court or losing to Sinner, putting the bags down, doing a big 360 wave goodbye. I say goodbye, but goodbye is really for that night. But it felt like a bigger moment. It reminded me of when Serena did something similar when she lost to Osaka at the 2021 Australian Open semis in Laver, and that was a less full stadium because of pandemic, but there were a few thousand people in there, and she stopped and did a similar 360 wave goodbye, and she never came back to that tournament as it happened. She retired. She didn't play much, and then she retired a year and a half later at the U.S. Open. So I think for Djokovic, yeah, I think he's won so much. I really thought there was a real chance he'd retire at the Olympics last year. That was kind of his last bucket list item he had in tennis. I mean, he has the all-time slam record. He now has the gold medal. He's, all these crazy stats. He has the what I call the Jokimon, winning all the Masters and slams and the World Tour final. He's done all of them twice. He's in Monte Carlo away from having won all of them at least three times, which is crazy because no one else has done it once. So there's all these different ways to measure how much he's done. And so the question of what is left is tough. But for him, moments he's had a couple big wins this year. Moments like beating Alcaraz in Australia and beating Zverev in Paris. Those are satisfying. Those can keep him going somewhat. But at the same time, I feel like if he doesn't feel like he can win a slam anymore, he'll probably stop. I don't think he needs to stay out there just to maybe make a semifinal or a quarterfinal here and there. And I think it's gonna be tough for him with how well these two guys are playing. I think he will. I never thought at this tournament he had a chance to win it because the draw held up, right? So I mean,
Yeah.
he was his once he made the quarterfinals, his draw was going to be number three Zverev, who I thought he had a good chance of beating, but then number one Sinner and then number two Alcaraz, and I did not see a world in which he'd beat both Sinner and Alcaraz. And I thought they were both likely to make it to those spots in the draw at that point. Um, so at Wimbledon, where he has his best shot, presumably he's won there the most or second most, won there a lot because even more in Australia, but he's won a lot at Wimbledon, especially late in his career. It's been really a strong place for him. And I don't know that he could beat both of them, but I think he could beat one on the right
Yeah.
day. And if he gets some help from the draw, if he doesn't have to play both of them, then maybe things could break his way. But if he has to play both again, I think that's going to remain a bridge too far for Novak. So, and we'll see. And he's also vulnerable to bad losses. I mean, he's had a lot of losses to players you never would have thought would beat him over the last 2 years, basically a year and a half, really, since the start of 2024. The Luca Nardis and Alejandro Tabilos of the world.
Mhm.
Um, uh, I know he's some sort of Canadian, so I don't want to slander Tabilo too much, but on this podcast, uh, but yeah, but just losses that piled up, and those are indicators of sort of being late in the career. If you're a great player, just having more bad days, more losses to guys who you wouldn't think are sort of on his level or worthy of quote unquote worthy of having a win over a guy like Djokovic. And there was a lot of those this season. And then he did have three good tournaments, or four if you want to count Geneva, where he did win. But Miami was good. He made the final in Miami, and then it was good in Australia, making the semis there. They get hurt, and then French Open was a solid tournament for him. But in between was a lot of pretty junky losses early on, and some two different three-match losing streaks he went on this year, which is very uncharacteristic for him. So I think he needs help. I think that he can definitely live up to his seeding at Wimbledon for sure,
Yeah.
make the quarters, and then he would need some help. If he plays Zverev again, although Zverev's never even made a Wimbledon quarter, I don't think so. That's not really his surface. But if he gets a part of the draw and get in the Zverev section or in the, I don't know how we do against Draper. We have to think about certain matchups for him if how the draw shakes out. But I think he would need some help, but it's not, he's in the mix. And if he would just need things, he would need more help than he ever has before.
Thank you guys so much for watching us at Matchpoint Canada. If you like our work, follow along, hit the subscribe button below.